Hello, this is Gerald Van. Why should I talk about a word, a Chinese word or character that if you hear Chinese, it's the first word that comes forward. It's one of the most known words as well. Sure, you can recognize it in movies even where it is separate, where you can see it as a confirmation, as a way of saying yes, of course, and or of saying like yes, I I am doing this or that or that. It has a specific place in a balanced yin and yang system as well, which is quite interesting to get to know. And if you start to understand it, and also start to recognize it in the character and even in the sounds themselves as well. And that's what I want to talk about today. And before I do that, I talk about the balance of our focuses. There are three typical focuses that are quite different, which are used also in a logic, and the logic builds up, maybe even in grammar and language and so on. The logic builds up within these three categories what you need or don't need. And in the Pythagorean order or numerological order of letters, they also follow that order and they go from one region to another. So the first focus that you can have is that one that is focusing upon what you consider as having an objective, and it is also an objective realization. What really is the physical object we're talking about? So it has a certain foundation of saying, I have here something, I have a focus from the things I want to work with. So what do I work with? The subject, let's say, as well, or the object that is defined in it. That foundation is also the foundation of everyone's starting point of a conversation, and in reality it's also the foundation of personal opinions, the starting point of where someone starts from it. That's the first category of what you use there. And also in grammar and so on, we use more often letters that are from that category as well to focus upon that particular area. The second area is that one that involves changes, time, and so on. And so you start to pay attention to something else. So you pay attention to a difference of, how I see it and how you see it. So it's not no longer a deliberate and more profound starting point of what I think and how I build up my logic. No, it also looks at what do you have to say. What is different from my opinion, your opinion? What is changes, and what do I need to do to understand it? And how do I have to adapt my focus to understand what is different? And there you use time for it. So you use also comparison to it. You use this splitting up your focus into two kinds of focus, and you focus upon the other and the conditions. And if you consider that idea, the second focus that you can have, the first focus, then in that perspective, clearly was actually nothing more than estimation of the whole reality. It can't breach its own vision and opinions and so on. When you stay into that first category, you have to look also, okay, but what is in your vision? It's a bit further away. Maybe you see the things a little bit different. What's the difference? You just look at what is the difference and how do we meet the understanding of what is different, the conditions. So the first starting point was actually nothing more than the confirmation of one opinion. In this case, it deals with two viewpoints, which already a higher level of understanding also. And what does it do then from the position of one person? It also focuses on, but what do I have to do to understand it? How shall I approach what is different, and how shall I do that? You try to meet these conditions where they are meet. it from your viewpoint of vision, and then you meet also the conditions that are described. So it is always in 2 points. And the first point where you started from, that was the x angle, let's say, from the 3 angles x, y, and z. That's the first angle, the horizontal angle, actually, where you built where you wanted something to continue and want to keep on building it. But here you're going to look at these things differently. So after what I need to do with it, how shall I approach it, and looking at the second part, where are these things going to, also involves an adaptation, and it also has a consciousness about the changes in time. What kind of changes are needed so that I can approach it correctly, and I can also meet the same conditions at some point in time or another. So compared to the x line, let's say, the horizontal, which I will describe a bit later, was a bit too quickly, you will have now the y part in 2 parts, the red zone, let's say, and the green zone. We can also have it as yes, where the conditions are met and where the conditions are not yet met. So we try to understand each other's, and my starting point was not complete. The conditions were not completely met, but I know where in y number 2, where I meet the same conditions and understand it. So basically it is the horizontal foundation where you continue your own approach compared to the verticals, the vertical points on my opinion, your opinion, or my approach, and on the next level, and your approach, and it is from this level onwards, from the timing, that we are talking about not opinions, but our approaches and conditions. So in the horizontal foundation starts to compare my starting point with your conditions. And that's why it is also about the vertical. There are 2 moments in time that have different conditions, and we focus upon a combination of these. And I will tell you in a moment why this is necessary. So also it is you have your focus towards the other, and you have your focus towards your original point, to where you have to adapt to it at some point or another to understand the second point, the number 2 there. And every Chinese character is dealing with that aspect. It's about that middle frame. It's the land of the middle as well. It's the land of the middle. It's the thinking of the middle. Keep it in the middle. Keep it in balance. Keep it in the yin and yang. It's completely in the middle. Each Chinese character starts with that focus towards the other. Towards what is then different. And it starts to focus upon that second category, focusing upon what are the conditions, so that I understand that I can adapt my X or unknown factor and keep it unknown. In this case, this will not be about opinions anymore. This will be about a viewpoint, and it checks my viewpoint, my starting point needs to adapt to go to even to the gravity of the situation of conditions that are described there, and how can I meet them and understand it. That's it, the philosophy in the background. The third category, which with a lot of letters in the Pythagorean numerological order, they also fit there, and they describe these focuses there. They have 3 focuses, like the ABC that you can see there. They have 3 focuses at once, and it starts to see, okay, but what's the context, so that I can make a good choice where I am at that moment, because maybe I'm a bit backward to the situation, maybe I'm in the middle of the situation, or I'm also going further than the situation, where more or less is my level of understanding. that I can adapt, adapt accordingly to what I know and understand. So this is compared to the general situation in the background towards a local application at that point and a general applicable context. These three parts, you always deal with these things. You have the general or the personal, the local. It can be a local successful one or a local walking behind it or walking too quickly. But it is focusing upon what is most applicable, that we understand the full context. That's the way of thinking the context. If you understand the context, if you understand the story and where the object comes together, where the object is useful in this context, you know also what the words is about and what they are describing. Why do I say that? Because this theoretical background is needed to understand certain, almost all the words, and also all the Chinese characters well, and also to understand how we define things in general. And so the last category is actually also these three comparison, balancing out estimations again, to see where do we have a correct application of the general and of the local and of the personal and of the other opinion and viewpoints combined, so that we have an application in time and space and can localize where we are and from which angle we can understand it at this moment. So total, you have all these arrows in the background. So you have the horizontal plane, which starts with the flat earth, let's say, of your opinion only without adaptation. The moments in which the things are different and you start to balance them out. And of course the situation, the conditions of the localizing the angle in which the situation is at this moment. The adaptation process towards the other, which is already there in the timing process, is also for the Chinese characters is very important. In the Japanese characters as well, it's very important. You go forward to what you need to do and you adapt it. And you adapt so that your starting point that you use actually from the beginning onwards and after having met the conditions is correct and is in balance. And this balance is very important for the yin-yang approach that you have in every character in Chinese and Japanese script. Okay, so let's now see for the characters that we need to add there in this kind of system. You know already that they will fit to the right categories as letters. And the starting point also for the Western point of vision is, of course, our perspective. We focus upon space. So that means the letters that we write down, the Roman letters, they start with A. And the I is there in the middle. It's that perspective with a middle point. And it's a middle point. It's very physical, but it's also an opinion. And it is also, because when you start to see how things evolve and how things have a context, it's temporal and it's an estimation. But we use these things because then we can shift things quite quickly. We use them already from the start and then see where it will lead us to. It's our perspective via language in letters, in the Roman letters. The sounds that are used, also in every language, they are, if they are not fitting perfectly with letters how they are written down, it's more or less like, okay, these are also like correcting positions. That's my experience, how they are used and how you can you have to deal with them. Most of these letters, they have a position within this system of 3 times 3 positions into 1, 2 or 3 centers. But there are a few places which are not about letters but about sounds. So the first basic sound was the A, also in frequency, just the frequency of 1 megahertz if I'm not mistaken. some of the higher frequencies, there are two places which are reserved in the system of to a sound alone, as a kind of sound expression. So while basically the starting point with is like, okay, I start from my opinion, my estimation, and I start to balance that out, and you follow a certain logic. As soon as you start to, when you continue, you can continue the same logic and make it more and more complex. You have two options in the end as the end results. Or your starting point is already exaggerating and crossing the line, let's say, and that makes it even somewhat funny if it still fits, and that's the he sound, because it still follows the logic, and the logic is still quite great and quite good, but actually the things don't fit anymore, and it's not really true anymore, and that's quite funny actually if you start to see that. That's the first sound that is crossing the line and going somewhere else, and the second sound is on the next level is that is where you really don't fit in the system anymore. So it's 1, 2, 3, Q, V, G, first level, he, H, R, second level, Hu, I, and I, and S. Here it's really going from up to from down to up to make it more clear. The H, then at the end as starting point, at the border, at the edges, at the limits of your understanding. It is crossing the line. It actually says, yeah, but the logic that you use actually no longer fits reality at all, and it also no longer fits as a logic, and that's why it's a sound. You cannot use it as a letter character. It's all balance and numerology and all that kind of things, and that's the conclusion of where the he and the hu is. Now where is the sh, of course, because I have to have them later as well. But here's the conclusion of he. I follow too much a starting logic, or with her, the logic is already leading nowhere. And of course, once you start a system and a logic, you'll also have to have the opportunity to leave that logic and have a look from outside it to have a look like, but what is it? And maybe I have to follow another logic, or it has to be included there. It's never nothing is a system that is perfectly enclosed. You have to have the openings here. These are the openings at the end, these two sounds that can be used at certain points. So what are we basically doing with A? It's actually following our personal choice of starting points and make up a logic. So basically we always start from a certain idea, a certain level of understanding of the world, which is expressed in that A letter. It's our personal estimation, and when we follow conversations, when we follow interactions and so on, in the end it will see if we really understand it or not. If it also meets all the interactions and so on, of course, and you keep it really balanced and you understand all these things, then you also have on the second level, you go towards the other and still incorporate the conditions that are described there, and you also incorporate the fitting to the general rules. The last category is about the general rules, about the real conditions of what is there always, or what is there at a specific moment, that you can really see that balance as well. And is completely balanced out. Also confirmation that you have a good starting point. You have a good starting point, or I have a good starting point to go to within this whole system and follow all logic. Then the I, or the personal choice there, can get a communal confirmation as sure. And if you write down the letters there, you have the S, the H, and the I. They're all into the last category. They're all about context, and it basically says yes, what you are started from, or what you need to start from, it's balanced out in the contextual frame, as you already could derive from it eventually. And I will also express it a little bit better, thanks to having an extra character that describes actually the same conditions that you need to meet to make that possible. So the global rules will have a reflection in the background also to the character, so they work together, the sounds work together with the character. But now I will go to the character, which basically is that sun center there, this time dependency, there's a certain conditions described there, and this is engagement, like you're walking and you do one step forward and you meet the conditions, and I will describe that into detail. So here you have these HI is basically all what is in the background playing along as playing along and have a good effect that you will find the context. And I already described that first character on top. So what is actually, you can give me the answer, what is the real center point that describes all the conditions in the background that we have, the general conditions, in a time frame also that we can use it. So what can we use, not just on one moment, like in sh is describing just one moment, but what value, what definition can we use always? So in a way, in the timing, which kind of timings matter for us, what kind of conditions can we use all years, within the whole year, the year in, year out, the whole year long, which kind of conditions describe that center focus very well? That's of course that solar association. The sun is as a middle point of thinking, which we often use there. It's a middle point of thinking, not because the sun is in the middle of everything, but because the sun is in the middle of a logic that we can use to describe the conditions on Earth. So the sun is a very good focus as a first center to see what conditions are there. And these conditions in timing are organized within a whole year cycle. That's the focus that we have, the conceptual, contextual description of all these circumstances can never describe better than simply with that solar center, in which you have a starting point, a central focus context from zero of, now it's not there, but from a certain moment it will appear, and you will have the local moments, and of course in the time you have the local moments, until you also can consider it as an applicable idea that you can use everywhere. That's that Z aspect in the end. So you have these conditions also not just in the circular center, but you also have them in a frame. And here I have them in three frames. I have focused them in three frames. The frames themselves are actually our way of organizing. And the frames in squares, that's our way to organize it. Why do we use it for so often? Also because we use this frame on for the Earth a lot. So we use that one, because it's our field where we work on, and that has an application on how we work on the field the whole year long. That's why the square is a much more important foundation of a character to build up the characters in the Chinese characters than, for instance, the circle. So everything is measured in squares because such squares are like working blocks, and it's very easy to measure any differences and any distinctions. And basically it is actually when we approach from me to you and to adapt, we do that into the context that we use also on the field, It goes from summer to harvest to winter to spring, and these positions, they will always be recognizable to some degree or another. These adaptations will always be recognizable in every Chinese and Japanese character, and I wrote about these already in my book, and it's there recognizable very well how you have to analyze the script as well. The sun center presented in squares is no better way than to describe the local context than in the time frame of the year on a square working field. So this is the same thing. The sun or the square with the line there, it's the same thing. It's the same symbol. The second part of it, so that was our central focus, that's our context, that were the general conditions where we start from in the mindset on top. We start from there and we depend on what we do with it. That's the second part. And there will be a dependency described of the conditions. We are dependent on what we do, how we approach, and what it is also best to do, and what you must do. The word do will come at certain points in mind as well. So it is divided by the condition. These conditions are like this. This is the number one also. The number one here is this is definable. I can reuse and reuse it as an element of focus. This is usable, I can use it. Basically, we start from from a person, the engaging person, which has here this walking character almost. And this walking character of Zhen is like the man itself, or the being itself, who participate in the system, who can fit in, and also can walk along on the run. So what does it need to do or to meet the conditions also in my time frame, in this case, of the conditions? The position itself will request what kind of conditions shall I meet and how shall I approach, how shall I go forward. It will be described in this double character underneath. And this double character, what also fits in there is that character of Tsi, which actually has, it shows a limit. So be careful before you continue. There are certain conditions. You can have them underneath. Let's say it is just a reference here to understand well what you need to do within the whole theory of not only my theory but also what is underlying underneath, how people have to approach to the balance between yin and yang. So first, before you continue, before you fit in, halt. There are certain conditions, and then you can shift in. When you shift in at that rightful place, it also changes the character. You deal with these conditions, and you deal with that one when you're sliding on a grounded and founded way. The character of Tse changes in Shang. And Shang actually also says, I will meet, in a way it will say, I meet the conditions and I'm able to proceed from here onwards. And that makes that double character underneath. Nobody says, I'm not saying that this is written down, these last things are written down that it really is like that, but it can be recognized in comparison of the characters that exist, and they fit in the logic of the approach that is needed to engage you, to act accordingly and to act in a just way. And when I put the letters in it as well of the sound, so sure, you have the background, the context, of course. It says also about context. It says now something about engagement and about context. So how do we see the combination? In a way, it will say, okay, this is the context of how you have to approach the context. It is approved in this context. That's how I can realize that thanks to sure, it's nothing but more than a confirmation that the I meets the odds and meets the rules of the community as well. It's context approved, let's say. First it slides in help a grounded May, and it deals with that localized gravity point of what you need to do, not just from my viewpoint of my perspective, but also from your perspective, from you, the second part, you. I go also towards that. I start from the perspective of I only when I also meet the conditions of the viewpoint of you and of the general conditions, of course. I hope this also brought you closer to the background philosophy of the whole script as well, and also it fits with the background philosophy of actually all the letters which follows self-organizing system also follow that same kind of logic, and it's very good to deal with all these levels and all of these things, to also allow yourself to follow these rules of logic so that you can participate via language and via letter combination awarenesses, how things really are, what is expected, and how balance is created even more easily. Okay, thanks again for watching. Bye bye.